Ancient Egypt is a symbol of an entire era of human history. It gave us the first and only remaining of the 7 wonders of the world, a great many works of art and questions, some of which were posed more than 2 centuries ago, when French scholars set foot in Ottoman Egypt with the army of Napoleon Bonaparte. Let's break down the long history of ancient Egypt into 2 major chapters. First, we'll talk about the dynastic Egypt, the time of gigantic pyramids, almighty pharaohs, and gods suspiciously resembling animals living nearby. The chapter begins with a long period of climate change. It has turned North Africa into a vast desert, and the Nile Valley has become the great oasis and a new home for refugees from across the region. The valley had no single center. Dozens of communities developed independently while keeping in touch with their neighbors. Gradually, 2 pillars of the future state emerged, a multitude of small principalities or nomes and 2 grand alliances. They went down in history as Upper and Lower Egypt and gave the name to the millennium leading to the formation of a unified state, the period of the 2 Egypts. Local rulers or nomarchs met to overcome differences and to judge each other's actions. At first, the leaders of the alliances were first among equals, rulers of important cult centers, and gained special powers only in exceptional circumstances. But soon they became full-fledged monarchs. Their regalia, the red and white crowns, had become symbols of the north and the south. After the successful military campaign of the ruler of Upper Egypt and the unification of the state, at the beginning of the archaic or early dynastic period, the 2 crowns became one, and that one symbolized the unity of Upper and Lower Egypt, along with the title of the ruler of the 2 lands and the new capital, Memphis, a city on the border of the 2 feuding worlds. The unification was followed by the creation of the first writing system with about 800 hieroglyphs, the forging of a unified religion, and the merger of funerary traditions. This is where the Old Period or the Old Kingdom begins. Its first half is the peak of Memphis power, the rule of the famous pharaohs builders, and the time of the construction of the largest Egyptian pyramids. From the tomb of Djoser, an experiment of the ancient Egyptian architect Imhotep, to the Great Pyramids of Giza, one of which remained the tallest structure on the planet for almost 4,000 years. But why haven't any of the heirs of the builders broken their record? There are evidences that the usual sources of high-quality stone have dried up, but also of important political changes. The capital's growing appetite angered the regional nobility and the priesthood. A couple of centuries and several palace coups later, the rulers of Memphis began to reckon with the opinions of those around them. And after the beginning of the 22nd century BCE, nature intervened. A severe drought, neither the first nor the last natural calamity in the history of ancient Egypt, pushed the state into the first intermediate period. A power struggle broke out between the 2 pretenders to the crown, which resulted in the victory for Thebes, the opponents of the old order. The new rulers wasted no time. The first half of the Middle Kingdom, or the period of reunification, saw extensive irrigation works, the establishment of a professional army, and the rise of an international trading network. The Egyptians drained the wetlands of the Nile Delta and created the Bahar Yosef Canal in Upper Egypt. It guarded the state from flooding until the late 19th century, when construction of Aswan dams began. Excess water during the annual floods of the river flowed to the Fayum Oasis, site of the new northern capital of the state, Ittawi. Herodotus spoke in admiration of the size of the neighboring city, the jewel of the region and its religious center, Shedet. The Greeks called it Crocodilopolis, as it was a place of worship of the crocodile-headed Sobek. The city stunned visitors with a number of statues and images of the deity, mummies of crocodiles, and by the maze-shaped temple, the Labyrinth. The idea enjoyed popularity. A famous replica was built by the people of Crete, the Greeks placed a minotaur in it, and the Christians decided that this shape exemplifies man's path to God, and proceeded to decorate churches and cathedrals with it. The army's importance was not limited solely to the conquest of the rich lands of Nubia and the Sinai Peninsula. It was fiercely loyal to the employer, Thebes. High-ranking military officers formed the new backbone of the ruling dynasty and made up for the loss of direct control over the regional nobility enjoyed by the rulers of the past. Trade occupies a special place in the history of the Middle Kingdom. Egypt already used to buy goods from the neighbors, mainly herbs and luxury goods. But now trade had become of national importance. Egyptians had been buying timber and metals necessary for smelting bronze, copper and tin, as well as exporting tons of gold, jewelry and papyrus. The importance of the latter should not be neglected. It was the main writing material in the region right up to the adoption of parchment in the 3rd or 4th century. Important and influential cities engaged in mining and resource distribution emerged in Nubia and Lower Egypt. 2 of them had become the capitals of independent states during the Second Intermediate Period. According to one theory, Thebes went through a dynastic crisis. They lost control of the outskirts of the state, and the local cities filled the power vacuum. According to another, the cities of the north and the Eurasian allies conquered a large chunk of the Nile Valley using the most advanced military technology, war chariots. There was likely a kernel of truth in both theories. For a century, the northern and southern capitals of Egypt differed from their subordinate lands both in the nationality and the religious affiliation. Despite the virtual assimilation of the descendants of the conquerors, Egyptians still called them Hyksos, meaning rulers from the foreign land. When the crisis in Thebes was left behind, the city's leaders used existing grievances to incite nationalist sentiment within the population and to picture a simple military campaign as a war for independence. Thus began the formation of the ancient Egyptian Empire, the New Kingdom. The first rulers of the new dynasty restored control over Nubia and the Sinai Peninsula, and during the reign of Thutmose III, the Egyptian army reached the shores of Euphrates. Chariots were no longer associated with the enemy. They had become a symbol of power. Even if the ruler would never engage in combat, he got a big chariot on a painting and a good-looking one in the tomb. Since neither pillaging settlements nor enslaving its populace fostered the popularity of the Egyptians in the conquered lands, a certain relations were established with the local chiefs. The chiefs had to swear an oath to the Egyptian pharaoh. The most reliable and influential joined the ranks of nomarchs. Their sons were taken as political hostages. They lived in Memphis and Thebes, studied and enjoyed the luxurious Egyptian lifestyle, and were later sent back to the native lands as loyal supporters of the empire. Nubian mines and slaves from the conquered lands ensured that the treasury had the necessary funds to build the new temple complexes and enormous statues of the pharaohs. Even the first significant defeat on the battlefield was turned into a political victory. After the Battle of Kadesh, between the armies of the Egyptians and the Hittites, the first ever peace treaty between the nations was signed. The Egyptian version of the document emphasized the courage of Ramesses II and laid the foundation for a cult of personality that outlived its creator by centuries. He ruled for an unprecedented 66 years, a record number of statues were erected in his honor, and 9 rulers of 20th dynasty adopted his name. He also remains the prime contender for the role of the pharaoh who argued with Moses on the pages of the Old Testament. Soon after the reign of Ramesses II, the golden age of the ancient Egyptian empire came to an end. The end of the 2nd millennium BCE saw perhaps the worst natural disaster in the recorded history, the so-called Late Bronze Age collapse, which we will discuss briefly in a separate video. The network of alliances that had evolved over the past 8 centuries and linked the countries and peoples of Southern Europe, North Africa and Western Asia was demolished in a matter of decades. The Egyptians left description of earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, floods and the emergence of the new tribes in the region, but the latter were granted special attention. The chronicles describe 2 attempts of invasion by a coalition which contemporaries called the Sea Peoples, as well as the casualties the nation suffered. But the attacks were repelled, and the main blow was the destruction of the commercial network and the large international community interested in maintaining peace in the region. The country began to fall apart. First came a strife between the 3 main cities, the Egyptian Thebes and Pi-Ramesses, and the Nubian Napata. Then between the many cities that tried to claim a share of the dying empire. The struggle would continue throughout the 3rd Intermediate Period, for about 400 years, and would culminate in a series of invasions which would see Egypt become a province of several powerful empires of the antiquity. In the next chapter, we will talk about the state's new influential neighbors, its conquest, and attempts to regain independence, as well as the changes undergone by antique Egypt. The easiest way to support the project is to give it a thumb up and subscribe to the channel to let me know that I'm on the right way. Even better if you can share the link with your friends. If you're feeling generous, you can look up my Patreon page, buy me a coffee, or check one of the sponsors of the channel, products I personally use or used in the past and can recommend with no hesitation. Thanks for your attention and have a great day.